The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to the Central City Citizen, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Thursday, February 23rd, 2023, and I'm your host, Professor X. During this podcast, we'll be having an in-depth discussion on the CW's The Flash. Please welcome my co-host, Dimitri Rajasinger.
What's happening, Central City?
And Jeffrey Aruz.
Welcome back, Central City, and Gotham City as well.
Tangentially, sure. Let's jump into our discussion of Season 9, Episode 3, which was titled Rogues of War and aired on February 22nd, 2023. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. Barry and Iris start to put together the pieces of what's happening in Central City and believe they know what the new rogues are after. Team Flash works together and recruits some unlikely allies to help, but the plan does not go as Team Flash expects. Meanwhile, Allegra does her best to avoid having a conversation with Chester. Slightly shorter than last week, but still a lot of stuff there in that plot synopsis. Anyway, we open with a heist at Corbin Taft Industries, a name which means nothing to me. I'm so accustomed to them like throwing in Ted Kord or something that means something from DC Comics that when it just seems to be a totally chosen at random name, it really kind of throws me. Boomerang and Fiddler steal something as aided by Murmur, who pops up out of nowhere. Meanwhile, in Paris, Barry and Iris are taking a cooking class. They excel at their assignment, thanks to using flash time, but are called away by an alert from Central City. Fairly standard way to open an episode, right? You get your cold open, then you cut to what our team is doing. Dimitri, what did you think about the surprise introduction of Murmur? And how do we feel about Iris improving her cooking skills? That creme brulee looked fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because Barry's been such a Boy Scout, like, I don't recall him ever doing anything like remotely cheating using his speed. So I feel like this is the first time we've seen him like sort of, even though it's like this like goofy, like, you know, throwaway moment, it's like the first time we've seen him like sort of use his speed to gain like a quote unquote unfair advantage, which I thought was interesting. But by and large, it was just, you know, it was a cute scene. I gonna be honest, I had forgotten all about Murmur.
No, none of us remember Murmur.
Yeah, I've forgotten all these people.
No. You can't have forgotten someone we didn't meet.
I mean, like,
we don't know Murmur.
I mean, like,
So Murmur
we meet a lot of people in this episode who are throwbacks, and I'm just like, who?
No, we've never met Murmur, right, Professor?
I don't recall ever having seen her before, but let's face it, we're 9 seasons in. There have been plenty of metas of the week. So I was thinking to myself, is this someone I don't remember?
No, we've never met her. But we would have 100... Well, okay. There are many that we would forget. Let's be real.
You're
But
right.
we
You know
would
what?
remember a meta-human supervillain that communicates via sign language. Like, that is memorable. Like, we have never met Murmur, even though they made it seem like, oh yeah, I wrote an article about Murmur's killing spree just last year. Like, this is another one of those situations where they're telling us stuff that happens, like, in the off-season, when the show is not on. Like, when their life goes on, and you know, the camera fades to black, and that kind of stuff. Like, this is what happened. Like, we were not privy to anything Murmur.
Okay. All right. I feel better now because I was just like, do I need to dig through past episodes? I mean,
No.
Yeah. But you know, she was cool. I
thought it was going to end up being the guy, because we see her in the promo. I thought it was going to be the guy, the creepy guy that does the contortion stuff.
Oh yeah, with the red dreads.
Yes, and the mask and everything. Like, he's fantastic. But then it was Murmur, which, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopefully they got a deaf cast member to play the role. But yeah, I felt bad because I was like, who? Sure, okay. Um, but I do think of the villains, and I almost want to put that in quotes. Murmur had the best stage presence. I can't take Violin Lady seriously at all.
is it the
Uh,
Ronald McDonald hair?
it's all of it. It's all of it. And this is before she said the sentence, "See you in the mosh pits, hot stuff." Like that's an actual sentence that an actual human being would say.
They
But
made her. They made her
Just
thirsty.
for the record, that's my
thirsty.
standard pickup line. I'm not saying it works well, but that is my standard pickup line.
I like it.
Fair
They made her
enough.
thirsty in this episode. It was very strange.
Yeah,
And I don't mind a
it
ship, but that came out of nowhere.
it really this whole episode, and I think it starts at the beginning. I don't want to get too into the weeds too early, but this whole episode really did feel tonally confused. Like you're doing too much of mixing the funny with things that are supposed to be sinister, and I can't take it seriously anymore. Um, I think early on the Flash was great at like, okay, this is a funny moment, this is a sinister moment, um, and allowing villains to really have that weight, even though it's a cutesier show than like Arrow. But I think that really fell apart with this episode. I mean, it's fallen apart on this show for a while, but with this episode, it was especially bad.
Well, continuing the theme of tonal confusion, at Star Labs, Chester tries to talk to Allegra, but she shuts him down because this is still the Arrowverse, which means we have to stretch these things out, even if it is the final season. Keon brings some plants into the facility and senses the awkwardness. Last week, I said I wasn't a fan of Keon, this sort of simple Jack portrayal of the wisdom of an incident. I didn't mind it as much this week, but I was thinking about something that Jeff said last week, which was the idea that she's going to be a weather controller. This episode makes me think she's going to be more of like a Gaia-like nature goddess in the making, the way she was, talking to the plants and apparently learning their names. Jeff, any thoughts on Keon or the interminable Chester Allegra situation?
Oh God. Okay, now that was not for Keon. I'm glad that you're stepping on over to the dark side, Professor, and embracing Keon in all of her earthly wonder. Okay, Chester and Allegra. It's funny how I've read so many articles about this is the final season and we don't have 20 episodes. We only have, I guess it's 13, and we can't stretch things out and we couldn't grieve for Caitlin, but yet we're stretching out this ship. They kissed. It was a good kiss. Let them talk and get over their bullshit because this is now exhausting. Like, this is a ship that should have been a ship like a season and a half ago. Like, it makes no sense that they're dragging this crap out when they clearly like each other. This is like beyond stupid. And unlike Dimitri, I actually did enjoy this episode. So even though I'm like bitching about this moment, it wasn't that it affected my entire experience of the episode, but it's so stupid. It makes no damn sense. Keone was wonderful and delightful. I agree with you, Professor. It seems as if she will be like a Mother Nature type of person. You don't mess with Mother Nature. YouTube that commercial, kids at home. It's kind of funny now if you look at it through modern day sensibilities. But she was adorable. I liked her observations. They're using her as, even though it's a familiar face, as the outsider looking in. And I enjoyed her celestialness.
Barry and Iris meet up with Kramer at the crime scene and determine a temporal scanner was stolen, which is essential to build a cosmic treadmill. However, the new Rogues are missing one major piece, a vibration engine. Shout out to Kramer. Nice to see her as an ally. It makes talking openly about, Barry and his secret identity much easier, even though I did have to notice there was a cop standing behind her at all times in shot.
Right.
So you might want to think twice about giving out too much information. Barry and Iris meet up with Hartley. Turns out he wants the vibration engine too, but for his new gauntlets. Hartley suggests they keep the villains from it. They have to steal it first, and suggests putting together a team of rogues to beat the bad guys to the punch. Okay, we have our major theme for the episode. I've always said I'm a fan of the rogues in the comics, and I like enlisting some of the old guard to fight the new whippersnappers. Dimitri, what did you think about the role Hartley's playing? I like the fact that he's vaguely antagonistic. He's not, completely friendly. He's sort of like the I'll help you, but I'll still be a dick about it, which felt to me, I kind of like that. I found it a refreshing take on, an ally who's, still kind of a jerk about it.
Yeah, I liked his ambiguity. I think the execution, the details sort of lose me a little bit. The whole sort of villains, like the reformed rogues. I don't know, the rogues on Barry's side, kind of working, like, kind of turning on him. But I thought the reason for turning on him was very flat, was very sort of one-dimensional. Like, oh, you don't trust us? Fine, we don't trust you. It's like, it sounded like something that would happen on like an elementary school playground. But I do like that, you have like certain characters who seem a little bit more bought in, and certain characters where it's like, it's hard to know where their loyalties lie. It kind of reminds me of one thing that I thought Arrow did really well, which was how they handled Diggle's, I think it was Diggle's brother, where it was sort of this will he, won't he, in terms of his like morality. I do think that is a little refreshing. We're used to, especially this early in the season, seeing characters that are very black and white. And I do think sort of, while the actual implementation is a little iffy in terms of the writing, the fact that we have those characters on a show like The Flash is, I think, a little bit of a breath of fresh air.
Barry and Hartley go out recruiting. He and Hartley easily recruit Jacko, the hotness, who's working at CC Jitters. They then go on to recruit Mark, who's still angry and resentful at Barry and Hartley, but he agrees because he says it's what Frost would want to do, or would want him to do. Then Hartley and Barry go to recruit their last member, Goldface, who has apparently sold out Amunet Black, which is very sad. I love those two together. And it does mean that, obviously, Katie Sackhoff is busy doing Mandalorian season 3, but still,
Galaxy Far, Far Away.
Would have been nice to see Amunet back.
Professor, you say you liked them together.
Yes.
I'm curious, have we actually ever seen them together?
Yes.
Yeah, we had a whole,
Pat Benatar,
where it was them. Yeah.
But were they actually... Because I remember him talking a lot about his love of Amunet.
Yes. They did a caper together, and they did the Pat Benatar song, and I think they kidnapped song. Iris.
Okay. But weren't they apart for a lot of that episode?
No, they were together in that episode. The last time we saw him, she was on the phone. And this is when...
Right, okay, there we go. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
No, but before that, they had shenanigans together.
Fair. I was thinking, I was like, I like that pairing in terms of like a silly, goofy, comic booky pairing. But I was like, but I remember seeing them, but like distinctly apart. I was also sad that he had sort of sold her out. I was
even though she was a meta-human trafficker and you have a problem with Frost, but you don't have a problem with Amunet Black.
I do have a problem with Amunet Black, but them as a pairing, I thought was like, okay, sure. Neither of them are model citizens, but
Well, clearly.
Jeff, let's talk the rogues. I enjoyed seeing Goldface and the hotness again. As I mentioned, I would love to see Amunet Black again, but it did set up, that delightful line about book club because, you know what, call me old-fashioned. I like to see a rogue who spends quality time with their hench people. How did you like how the rogues were reintroduced? And, we were just talking about it, but the callbacks to past episodes.
Okay, I enjoy Amunet Black as well. I'm very sad that she's stuck in a galaxy far, far away, but she's making that Star Wars money, so I can't really complain. Because let's be real, that's more money than the CW. I mean, am I right? I mean, let's just be honest. But anyway.
Probably.
Yeah, I still really don't. I mean, I understand that that's probably his comic book name, but the fact that he's the hotness is just... I kind of can't with it. But anyway, Goldface was fantastic to see again. He has an incredible presence, and we've been talking a lot about the height of actors on this show. I was like, damn, Goldface is tall. Good grief, he was standing next to Chill Blaine and the others, and he was like towering over them. Like it was, I was like, are they the size of Cecile? Like it was, I was like, whoa, I never realized he was that tall. It was great to see his main hench person there, his right-hand man, just because he's like always been there whenever we've seen Goldface. So it was great that they brought him back, even though he just had like a tiny little moment of anything. But I mean, it was nice to see them back. I thought, I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Why haven't they done this before? Just because, I mean, there have been several seasons and they could have done something like this early on. But anyway, another shoulda, coulda, woulda type of situation. I don't really have anything else to say because I really want to get into what happens because I have a very strong opinion about issues with trust.
We will get into that. The newly put together team of rogues meets at Star Labs to work out their plan, but they're having some issues. Things come to a head when they ask about what happens to the engine. After all, this was supposed to be a heist, right? And when you heist something, it's for the money. They all want their cut of the score. As tensions rise, a fight nearly breaks out, but Barry shuts down, says he's just going to stick with them. This leads the rogues to basically say that Barry doesn't trust them, which, fair enough, he doesn't. So they vote him off the team. Did not see that coming. It wouldn't be a heist without an unexpected twist. Dimitri, were you surprised that happened at this point in the episode? It seemed kind of early for the big twist in the heist to happen. And were you surprised that Barry didn't immediately go to his go-to move, which is going, okay, guys, here's the facts. I'm the Flash. So now you should trust me.
Honestly, yeah, I was waiting for that to happen. This episode shattered expectations by having the criminals figure out he's the Flash rather than Barry just, volunteering that without anyone really saying anything. I do think it was a nice twist. I did think everything was unfolding a little too like, oh, okay, I need a team. Look, all these bad guys will suddenly reform to work with me. And so I did like that, the tension in the team was sort of maintained throughout the episode, which is sort of a refreshing sort of take on this kind of superhero trope. That being said, if you remember the time that Barry trusted Captain Cold and was then betrayed, it did seem strange that Barry, wants to do essentially kind of a similar plan again. And also, I know out of universe, all these shows are canceled and the cast have probably moved on to other things, but Barry has, super friends, call Black Lightning. We would have loved to see Jefferson Pierce again. You have more options besides just these criminals. So, that was also, it didn't seem so, I wasn't sold on the fact that the only people you can call are these people. They kind of gloss over it a little bit, and I know it's kind of, plot based and, we wanted to, give Barry his army of rogues, but yeah, I wish you would have sold me more on that being necessary.
Yeah, as I said before, I'm a little more forgiving of that because, when you go into the comics, there is this tradition of the Rogues stepping up to protect the city when the Flash isn't around. So I have a weakness for the idea of the Flash's Rogues. Unlike Batman's Rogues, the Flash's Rogues sort of, have that sense of that, they're members of Central City, and they do protect the city on multiple occasions. So I kind of like that, but you're right. It was sort of, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Oh, I don't know. Why don't you just call Supergirl? Because, she's part of this reality. Why don't you just have, Dreamer come in or Brainiac come in or any of the other dozen or so characters, But, within the context of the show, it didn't bother me as much. And I did like, getting a revisiting of Rogues that we haven't seen for a while.
Fair enough. You want to give us like a little bit of a background in the comics of the Rogues? Because I actually didn't know that. And maybe our listeners don't either.
Yeah, there was, I mean, the Flash's Rogues, as I said before, are like, very well established, very colorful. And traditionally the Rogues have, a code of honor. The Rogues don't kill. It's always, sort of, the Flash traditionally, and again, talking about Silver Age Flash here more than contemporary Flash. The Rogues are sort of, they're just in it for the money, but they're not going to hurt anyone. And it's sort of like, when they're caught by the Flash, it's sort of like, oh, well, fine, you got me. So it's a very lighter, as I say, it's very much a Silver Age sort of approach to the Rogues, which obviously has changed as, everything becomes darker and grittier in the contemporary sense. But there was a fairly famous one where, Flash disappeared after, one of the big crises or something like that. And the Rogues basically, became the defenders of Central City. They banded together, Captain Cold or Citizen Cold, as he was called at the time, and they were the ones who were protecting Central City from the alien threat that was threatening it. So I think there's a little echo of that in this, of the Rogues stepping up to protect the city, even if, they were doing it for less than noble reasons, as we'll see.
Gotcha. So they're kind of like traditionally, usually a villain, but like a lighter villain that sometimes kind of like Catwoman, well, minus the, romantic.
Yeah, actually, Catwoman is a much better analogy than, like, when you think of any of Batman's Rogues gallery, they're all basically psychopaths. Whereas the Flash's Rogues are just, people who are in it for the money.
Gotcha.
Iris and Chester.
Well, actually, before we leave, because it's not going to make sense for me to mention it later on. For me, if I had a major bitch about this episode, it was the writing of that scene. And I get it. They had to do plot stuff so that later on there could be like a payoff, in air quotes. But the writing was so stupid, in my opinion. Like, okay, so the Rogues are like, oh, so this is what we're going to do? Okay, well, like, I want the doodad. Well, no, I want the doodad too. I want the doodad 3. I want the doodad 4. We're all going to fight for the doodad. And then Barry's like, oh, y'all want the doodad, but it's like for the greater good, and like it's for the world, and you're saving the world, and you're saving Central City. Wait, you can't get the doodad. No one gets the doodad. Oh, wait, you don't trust me? Oh, you don't trust me 2? You don't trust me 3? You don't trust me 4? Y'all are talking about stealing the doodad, and you think he's gonna trust you? Like, it just seemed so ridiculous to me, because, like, clearly the 4 of them were being shifty and shady, and they wanted to steal the contraption for themselves. And so they got offended that Barry was thinking that he couldn't trust them when they were being untrustworthy. It just seemed ridiculous to me. And like, Barry Allen is very self-righteous. We have spoken about him in the past in regards to how, he is holier than thou, and he judges people, and he's more than likely in the wrong when he acts that way, but he was fully in the right this time around. And so when he has a whole, crisis of conscience later on, it made no damn sense, because yes, you didn't trust them because they were being untrustworthy.
Well, yeah, but they're criminals. You can't expect them to suddenly put that aside unless they realize they're doing that, And again, once Barry sort of reveals that he is the Flash, spoiler alert, and explains that he's doing this to protect the timeline, that means a lot more, because what Barry had said was that, he was basically just in there as an undercover CSI as if that's a thing.
He's the chemist.
And they should trust the chemist. Yes, and again, that was a nice callback because that was a fun episode. But no, I kind of accepted that, the fact that you have the rogues would naturally react as well. No, we're doing this because we're going to steal something and we're going to get some money out of this, right? Because I'm a rogue. That's what I do. What was weird about it was that 2 out of the 4, well, technically 3, as we'll see in a moment, knew who Barry actually was. So it was like this weird, vibe going on that, Hartley and Mark both knew exactly who Barry was, and were sort of like staring at him, just tempting him to, okay, go ahead, reveal yourself. And he didn't, which again, as we said, seemed a little odd because that has been Barry's go-to move for 9 seasons. But we will revisit that because obviously, that has to be resolved for the heist to take place. Meanwhile, Iris and Chester are figuring out the tech the bad rogues are using was all made by the same person, but they can't figure out the connection. Iris is stressed out. She thinks there's no time for her to accomplish anything. She's looking for that one big story because once she has children, she figures there won't be time for her to do that. She feels like she needs to break that one big story. Iris convinces Barry to trust the rogues, and he races off. Meanwhile, Chester figures out the connection between the bad rogues. Their weapons are all prototypes from Wayne Enterprises, which would have been such a huge reveal if it weren't for what I said last week. If only we hadn't known who was behind the Red Death. Mm-hmm. But I've always been a fan of embedding the show in the larger Arrowverse. So, Jeff, let's talk about Iris, but also Barry and Iris. What did you think about Iris's arc? Her sense that, the sense that, her, she's going to become a parent. She feels that her life is going to come to an end, or at least change very significantly. But also, we're getting a lot more West Allen this season than in the past couple of years. And how are you liking it?
Loving the West Allen goodness. It's fantastic. They are the, I forget what they call themselves. I don't remember now what the phrase is, but they're like the it couple in the Arrowverse. That's what the fans call them. And so it's wonderful to see them together, fighting good fights and, making the difficult decisions or the right decisions in regards to what needs to happen in their lives. What was fascinating about Iris' story for me in this episode is that her story was very real. It's very real world. She's a young woman who is going to be venturing into motherhood, and she's questioning if she's going to still have time, if she only had time to do stuff. She's got to get those Pulitzer Prizes. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't grow on trees, but apparently they do in the Arrowverse. And she knows she's going to get 2, so she feels like she needs to break the big story and all that kind of stuff. And I understand it. It's a very real world, on the ground, feet on the ground storyline. The only thing that makes me go like, about it is the fact that she knows what happens in the future. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe she doesn't know as much as Barry knows, because clearly he's been studying it to create a scrapbook about it and that kind of thing. But she knows things happen in the future. So clearly, whatever she's doing now is setting up what happens in the future. It might not happen the exact same way that Barry thought it was going to, because I do feel like, there's free will, and that sort of thing where, maybe the outcome will be the same, but it'll happen in a different sort of way, just based off of decisions and butterfly effect and all that kind of stuff. So, clearly, if you've won Pulitzer Prizes in the future and you have kids, I mean, gasp, gasp. Is it too much to think that maybe you won the Pulitzer Prize after you had kids? Like, you were still working, and clearly CCC Media has grown into an empire in the future, which I believe she knows. So, I mean, she was able to somehow balance work and home life. So we're like watching a fantastical show that, deals with time travel in the future and all that kind of stuff. So when she's talking about like boots on the ground or feet on the ground, boots on the ground I think means something else, but feet on the ground type of real world storylines, I can't forget the fact that great stuff happens to her in the future. But I know at the time, I mean, she doesn't really want to think about that because we've already seen that she didn't want to know anything about the scrapbook and that sort of thing. But I liked Barry's sort of reassurance with her, like, hey, it'll be fine. You'll be able to figure it out. Because once again, that was sort of like a real world type of storyline.
Yeah, and I think, for despite the fact that, Barry knows what the future is supposed to hold. Remember that, Iris was all about, freedom of choice, making her own decisions. And so from her point of view, the future could be completely remade, and maybe she won't win those Pulitzers, and maybe CC Media or CCC Media, won't be as big as it was, quote unquote, supposed to be. And I think, as you were saying, I think that's a very grown up and a natural thing for someone to encounter, when they're facing the prospect of having kids. It does change things. To put things in, there's a TV show airing up here in Canada called Children Ruin Everything, which I only mentioned because Megan Rath, who, was, an occasional guest star on Supergirl, is one of the co-leads of it. And the whole point of it is how children fuck up your life. And I think realistically, that has to be a concern that anyone would face going into that. You're everything is going great in your life. You're married, you're happy, you're able to flit off to Paris to make creme brulee. By the way, shout out to the creme brulee, look fabulous. I think that's a very realistic, concern for her to have, despite, what Barry claims to have seen in the future. You can't trust that the future will unroll exactly as planned. And I think, again, as you said, I think that's a very grown up, mature, concern that a lot of people would have. And a nice touch of realism in the episode. Barry shows up at the heist and says they'll follow Hartley's original plan. Hartley will get the engine, but he has to buy out the rest of the team, which was kind of cute, as the rest of the team goes, yes, $250,000, and Hartley's going, what? And instead of revealing his identity to the team, Jacko says he figured it out already, even if Goldface didn't, which I thought was a nice little touch for Jacko, who was, being played throughout the entire episode as the dumb guy. The guy who figured it out, and basically saying, it's obvious. I mean, look at him. And also they have the same coffee order.
Yes, which I was like, Barry Allen? What the hell? You have the exact same coffee order as the Flash.
Look, Barry's pretty sloppy about hiding his identity. We all know that.
True.
The heist begins and goes super smooth at first, but Mark double crosses the team. He's working for the mysterious benefactor. Hartley prepares to go help Barry, but he's engaged by Murmur, while Jacko's engaged by Fiddler, and Goldface is engaged by Boomerang. You know what? I was honestly surprised by Mark's heel turn. I mean, Mark's face is in the opening show credits, so the turn took me by surprise. Dimitri, you're not a fan of Mark, have never been a fan of Mark or Chilblain. Were you surprised by the turn? And follow-up, is Mark playing some sort of double bluff? I'll repeat, he's a series regular, and his face is in the show opening.
I was surprised largely because, as you said, his face is in the show opening. And also, while this is a believable turn, it isn't like the Flash usually doesn't have characters that are this complicated. Is the most straightforward way to put that. I feel like that's
shade in a big way.
I was expecting somebody to maybe turn on him. But once they all kind of abandoned him, I was like, okay, that's the betrayal that you get for an episode like this. And I wasn't expecting it anymore. So when there was, the secondary betrayal, with Chilblain, I was taken by surprise, largely because one, you expect the guy who's like, this is what my dead girlfriend of 2 minutes would have wanted, to be the least likely to betray them, because it just seems like a stronger calling. Like you would expect like people who are motivated purely by money, or some sort of like less emotional attachment to turn on Barry. So I was expecting Goldface to betray him, but since Jacko has his kid and Chilblain has Frost's memory for what that's worth, Um, but
You're evil.
it was a it was a shock. Given that I already don't think characters are on this show that are that complicated, I would be shocked if this is a what are we up to now? Quadruple bluff, and he's secretly playing the bad guys to support the good guys that he's trying to honestly, like that would be a bit much for me. I think the interaction that we saw between him and Red Death seemed to solidify that he really had betrayed them. I wouldn't be surprised though if he's like, I shouldn't have supported Red Death. That wig is horrifying, and I shouldn't betray Frost's friends because we dated for 20 minutes. So I'm gonna, switch sides again and come back to Team Flash. I think that's the more likely outcome, but I could be wrong.
Although Frost did have a terrible wig, so maybe he was, biased.
Oh, he likes the bad wigs.
Fair, yeah. Oh, she has a terrible wig now.
Mark confronts Barry and says he has no choice, who tells Barry that he had no choice but to join Benefact because they promised to help bring Frost back. Mark knocks Barry out, takes the engine. The good rogues fight the bad rogues. Shout out to Hartley for knowing ASL. And also, a little shout out to the Flash writers for including an ASL scene. Jacko makes a romantic connection with Fiddler over 9 Inch Nails. She so kicks his butt. Goldface faces off against Boomerang. Not a lot of fighting, but Jeff, what did you think about the fight scenes? This is kind of funny. I really thought from the moment we saw Fiddler facing off against Jacko, just the way they were framed, I thought to myself, this looks like a meet cute. And turns out it was.
Oh, Lord. I didn't see that coming. And it was a little cringe. 'Cause she's kind of cringe. And apparently he's the hotness. And so he melted her. Yeah. I didn't see that coming. I don't know if I approve of that ship. I don't have a ticket on that tugboat. But yeah, Bond. It's funny how you said they bonded over 9 Inch Nails, and now I have an image of like her having 9 Inch Nails and him like really liking them, and so that's why they bonded. But anyway, everyone else. I enjoyed the Goldface moment just because Boomerang seemed very excited to like finally be up against like a formidable foe. I also enjoyed when the Boomerang came back and like sliced his head and it was like gold under there, but then it like self-healed. So it was kind of neat for like a little VFX moment. Then the ASL fight was fascinating to watch. But like, and it was like Murmur was trying to like lure Hartley over to the dark side, but it didn't work. And yeah, like it wasn't much of a fight. I'm very worried that when they fight again, it's not going to be much of a fight again. So I hope that the good rogues end up like beefing up their fight training because yeah, they didn't do so well this time around. And I get why we have the good rogues and the bad rogues so that, we have kind of like what's this episode called? Rogues of War. So we have a rogue war at a certain point, because there's, the boss, the bad one, Red Death, and we have the good one with the Flash, and then you have their rogues to fight each other while the big guns end up fighting. So I get the visual. They just need to step things up because clearly hotness wasn't that hot. Goldface, I believe, could have handled himself. And poor Hartley, yeah, just ended up getting tossed like a rag doll.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that sort of setting up the next fight, because it felt to me like the classic superhero trope with good guys getting beaten the first time, but then they'll come back for the bigger, better fight later when they win. So count that as my second surprise of the episode because there is that final confrontation where they line up against each other. But the heroes, instead of the fight breaking out that you were expecting, the big CG laden where the heroes turn the tide, and this time they win, possibly by the classic superhero trope of switching partners and fighting different people. Instead, this time they're all taken down by the mysterious speedster Red Death. Now, Barry's a speedster himself. He shouldn't have spent so much time posing. They spent a lot of time lining up and posing before Red Death actually showed up to take them down. But anyway, This isn't quite our first introduction to Red Death, but it's the first time we really see them in action. As I mentioned, I was surprised by the sudden appearance, and I thought they seemed quite menacing. Dimitri, what did you think about our introduction to Red Death in action?
Absolutely didn't surprise me. The only thing that surprised me was they all get into position, and I was expecting them to completely dust the bad rogues, and then Red Death shows up and whoops all of them. Like, the fact that Red Death just was like, I'm not even gonna trust my guys. Like, let me handle this myself. It felt a little anticlimactic. I think, especially given that they all spent so much time posing as if it's almost like the Arrowverse pose. Like, everyone takes like this exaggerated fighting position on one side. Everyone takes the same position on the other side. We saw it in Black Lightning. We saw it in Arrow. We've seen it in every single crossover. But it did feel like it was going to lead to a big battle. And I was expecting at the end of the big battle, they're going to win, but then Red Death is going to come and take the engine anyway. I wasn't expecting Red Death to be like, we don't have the budget to shoot that scene. Let me just swoop in and jack the engine right now. I think,
Red Death is also in control of the accountants.
Yep, yeah. And I guess that does serve to add some credibility to how menacing Red Death is. And, I wasn't super bothered by Red Death's, henchmen because, again, there's a lady who plays a violin cannon.
She's a fiddler.
Right. Yeah. It makes sense now. So,
You're welcome.
I could have gone either way, but it did feel like we were building up to this big fight that then didn't happen.
Can I also just add to the fact that we had our good rogues walk into the DoD facility like undercover, but yet somehow under that like really plain jumpsuity type of thing that they had on, they had their rogue uniforms under there, like ready to go. Chillblaine with that weird open jacket with the fur thing on it, and Hartley with his hoodie, Goldface with his suits, Hotness with that. Like it was under there. Like it was, or they were like they brought it so that they could do a quick change instead of remaining undercover. Like that was just
the only
so strange.
one of them that bothered me was Chillblaine's, because his sort of like Craven cosplay.
Yes, that's what it is.
Was so ridiculous. Whereas, Hartley only had to like pull out a hood and suddenly he's, Jacko could have been wearing a t-shirt under his overalls. But that was a little odd. And, obviously setting up, for the final scene. So
it was very Siegfried and Roy.
Anyway, so after Red Death, mops up Barry and his team, Barry asks the Rogue Squad for their help, and they agree, telling Barry to find out who Red Death is, what their weakness is, and then call them. Chester explains to Team Flash that the bad Rogue tech represents Wayne tech, but it's far more advanced. He also reveals that Ryan Wilder, a.k.a. Batwoman, is apparently missing, but she's not missing for long, because in the stinger at the Red Death's lair, Mark wants what he's promised, but Red Death changes the deal. Shades of Darth Vader here. Empire Strikes Back. Look it up, people. Mark says he can't trust them because he doesn't know who's under the mask. So Red Death unmasked. And it's, spoiler alert, Dimitri, Ryan Wilder doing some Cruella DeVille cosplay with a white streak in her hair. She corners Mark and says, I am vengeance. What did you think about the reveal that really wasn't much of a reveal? So again, apologies for last week, Dimitri. I kind of hoped Javicia was going to say, I am vengeance. I am the knight. I am Batman. It was a little shout out to Batman, the animated series, and R.I.P. Kevin Conroy. But even I have to admit that would be a step too far. So I'll open this up to both of you. I'll start with Jeff. What did you think of the reveal of Javicia? We knew who it was going to be, but we didn't know about the Cruella de Vil streak in her hair. What did you think about the way the episode wrapped up?
Okay. Well, she would have said I am Batwoman. I mean, let's get it right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. The hair was a choice. And maybe I'll leave it at that as far as the hair. The hair was a choice. But my assumption is that we're supposed to be seeing a Batwoman of the future? Question mark. I mean, they said all these hints about it's Wayne tech, but it's really, really advanced. And you know what's really, really advanced? The future. So that's my assumption. Okay, to rewind a little bit, the Luke Fox shout out was amazing. Seeing him via like Skype would have been really nice just because we enjoyed Luke on Batwoman. So that would have been a nice little, like 10 seconds to caught up with the previous character or a previously seen character on a different show. But at least the shout out was very nice. Clearly, when we saw the cracked bat light up symbol on Red Death, like close up many times and like right in Barry's face, like, hello. You need to start getting the wheels turning in your brain. Like, come on, figure it out. So the line of that she went missing a couple weeks ago while doing a patrol thing, that was interesting. And I will say this, Javicia Leslie was incredibly convincing as a sort of psychopathic Batwoman, I want revenge, and, she sold it for me is basically what I'm saying with just that one line, I am vengeance. Like, that was really, really good. My concern with this storyline is just this. We have been with, that sounds strange, we have known Ryan Wilder for a moment, right? Like, we know her as a character, we know her set of values. She's a hero. Like, she is the epitome of a hero in Gotham City. Yes, she did have a couple little moments when she wanted vengeance on Alice. I'm gonna forgive and forget that for this. I just can't see how the Ryan Wilder that we knew became this person. Because I'm assuming she's playing Ryan Wilder at an older age. Not to say that you can't have gray in your hair. I mean, you can get it in your 30s. But because, the questionable wig had a lot of white, I'm assuming she's supposed to be an older Ryan Wilder that saw some shit. And that is what has changed her and that sort of thing. But
Jeff,
wait, let me finish this. I just, in my mind, I just can't imagine it. Based off of everything that we know about Ryan Wilder, I can't see her become this person, this older Ryan Wilder that has gone batshit crazy. Batshit crazy. She's Batwoman. But, so I hope that there is a good story as to why this is happening. There's a part of me that somehow, and I'm so scared to even say this aloud, there's a part of me that's very worried that this is a machination of that man, and this is going to be how this man returns. And by that man, I mean the Reverse Flash. So, so I just hope that we get a good explanation as to how she became this person, because I just can't see the Ryan Wilder that we know fighting against another superhero. Anyway.
Jeff, did you watch the next episode preview?
I did, but I'm trying not to get into that because I don't know if the professor has seen it.
I didn't see it, so no one say anything about it.
Okay, well, in that case, all right, let's just move on.
Oh, wait, don't you have an opinion about the Wiggalicious? Javicia Leslie got wiggy with it.
Comment on the wig.
Javicia Leslie is one of the most beautiful women on television.
She's gorgeous, and she's clearly playing an older version, and we know black don't crack. So, I mean, she could play older, even with that horrible wig, but that wig...
I have to say that wig was so bad that, like, it, I think every time Javicia Leslie is on screen, like my heart flutters slightly. And the wig was so phenomenally horrible that this was the one time that didn't happen.
I hope she
I
got
saw the
workman's
wig and I was just
compensation for the wig.
I could not keep a straight face. Like it was so, so terrible. And you know, I I have my thoughts as to why Ryan Wilder is now a villain,
Do we think it's
but
because she's dead, right? Sophie's
don't know
dead.
how to discuss this without getting into the next episode preview.
You
'Cause
can, because there's nothing in the preview that alludes to what I just said. I think Sophie's dead. She blames the Flash, and that is what led her to down this path. And in my opinion, somehow that stupid motherfucker is going to be involved in this, the fucking Reverse Flash. And he might have convinced her to whatever, and that's because what's good. Okay, this is what she's gonna do. I'm gonna blow all y'all's mind. So she's trying to go back in time so that Sophie doesn't die, and that's gonna cause a Flashpoint situation, and somehow the Reverse Flash will be coming back because of this frickin' Flashpoint situation, and that's how he's going to end up being the big bad for like the final 2 episodes of the season/series. And then finally Barry's going to somehow hoodwink the Reverse Flash, and Iris is going to shotgun him in the face, and that's how he's dead forever. You're
I
welcome.
don't know about Iris killing him. but
Iris kills everybody, so yes, she will be the one to kill him. Barry Allen
I
is
mean,
not going to
she
stick his
slays.
hand in his heart and pull it out.
Like,
Although he
she
should.
slays, but so far, I mean,
She killed
I'm
Zoom.
not sure. She did, but I mean, no, she killed Savitar.
Oh, Savitar, sorry. Yes.
But I mean, fucking Savitar. I have a feeling you might be right.
I don't want to be right. I don't want that man back, but clearly it's the series finale, so they're going to bring him back.
Well,
they just brought him back
they-
way too many times.
They have. It's overplayed. Like, part of me says, like, he should come back because it's the finale. Part of me says he shouldn't come back because that's just what they do every time.
He's been
they're
in
out of
every
ideas.
season finale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I it's a shame. I do think you're right. I do think they hint in the episode preview that, Red Death is using the negative Speed Force. So, it does seem like we did get a hint in the first Nora season that the negative Speed Force alters your personality. So I do think that probably Thawne persuaded Ryan to use the negative Speed Force, and maybe Ryan did it with good intentions, not knowing it would alter her personality. I do think, that is an interesting idea that Sophie could be dead. I don't want it to happen.
That's the only way that I think she
Wild
would go
War
crazy.
I mean, yes, but
You think she's
she's
going to go
also
this crazy if Mary died? I mean,
I
no
mean,
offense to Mary. She's wonderful.
I would,
She's a precious
but,
cinnamon roll that should be protected at all costs. But she's not going to go that crazy if Mary died. It is Sophie.
Well, so
Sophie's
the
dead.
only
She
thing-
blames the
The only
Flash.
thing that holds me back from that is I feel like if Sophie had died, Luke would have mentioned that on the phone.
No. I think Ryan Wilder was somehow kidnapped. Oh, maybe by the Reverse Flash. Somehow sent to the future. Sophie's dead, and then that's when she goes batshit.
Interesting.
Well, she wouldn't have to have been kidnapped and sent to the future. If she's that old, she could have just lived to that point in the future.
Oh, there you go.
But she's
Yeah, that's
also
true. Yeah.
missing. She also went missing recently, right?
No, but that's recently missing. Like, she could have, like, let's say a Reverse Flash pulls her out. She comes back 6 months later. This is still in the time when she's missing. So she comes back in about 6 months, lives her life, and then somehow, the Reverse Flash probably posing as the Flash. Oh, this is interesting. The Reverse Flash, once again, because he's done this before, he poses as the Flash, kills Sophie. Ryan Wilder is at her darkest point. She is so traumatized that her ally, a fellow hero, would kill her wife in front of her kids. Let's make it a horrible, let's make it a horrible situation in front of her kids. And so then the Reverse Flash is like, I know what that feels like. You need to get your vengeance on him and create a flashpoint. Go back in time. Make the treadmill. All this shit sounds crazy. But, and that's what she does. There you go. There, boom. Professor,
Do
you
we
haven't
need to
chimed in on
tape
the
the
wig.
rest of the season, or has Jeff just kind of got it?
I hope that I'm not right in any of this, but I probably
have
am.
a disturbing feeling that a good portion of what you said is right.
All right, let's bookmark this. Let's go back to this later on.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Oh.
Professor, you haven't given us your thoughts on the wig, and you have been very forgiving at horrible wigs in the past. Remember our girl over on Supergirl? She had a very bad wig on, but you defended it until the series ended. Are you gonna give a controversial take on this wig? Did you actually enjoy gilf realness that Javicia Leslie was giving us?
No, I mean, even for me, this wig was a step too far. I don't know about the speculations about Ryan and all that. I think we've only got her for 2 more episodes, so it seems to me what you're
it's only
talking about
2
is something
more?
that would span out over the entire end of the series, and it feels to me because the next 2 episodes are, I think, Mask of the Red Death and Part 1 and Part 2. And I don't think Javicia is coming back for anything more than that. So I don't know if it's going to be quite as long-term as you're thinking.
Wait, how do you know that it's only 2 more
He
episodes?
looked on IMDb and spoiled himself.
No, I just think that it's because I know next week's is called Mask of the Red Death Part 1. So I'm guessing the one after that's called Part 2.
Well, yeah, that would be, yeah. Could you imagine if it's Part 3?
Javicia coming back, they didn't say it was for any sort of long-term arc or anything like that.
Well,
It was
then,
only going to be a couple episodes.
can I ask you, Professor, because I know that you are the comic book aficionado, you know how this storyline plays out in the comics. Clearly, it's very different on the show. It's not Batman. It isn't sort of like...
So different that I don't think there's any connection.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, this was like a Flashpoint thing. This was the Thomas Wayne version of Batman who becomes the Red Death. But yeah, this is completely different.
Okay, so then give me your crackhead theory on how our wonderful, fantastic, redonkulously heroic Ryan Wilder from Batwoman, the wonderful show that we enjoyed the final 2 seasons, not whatever it was in the year 1. How does she go from being that bastion of hope in Gotham City to this ridiculously wiggy woman?
I think it's got to be more than just the death of Sophie, although I think that could certainly play a role. I think we're going to find out she's from a very dystopian future where things are really, really, really bad. And, presumably she's blaming the Flash for that. And again, it almost has to be that she's blaming the Flash because why would she come to Central City? Why wouldn't she just try to put these pieces together and then use them in Gotham? If all she's trying to do is create her own Flashpoint of going back in the past and, undoing the past, why is she bothering to torment the Flash? So I think there has to be some sort of payoff in that. I don't think it's Reverse Flash. It just seems like that's a little too on the nose. And I think, honestly, if you were going to have a Reverse Flash reveal, they would save it for later in the season. We'll only be 4 or 5 episodes into it, over the next 2 episodes. So, I mean, if they were revealing that as the big surprise for the end of it, I don't see that happening for whatever reason. But yeah, I think she's like, Batwoman of a dystopian future and, has decided to go back and fix things. That would make sense. But yeah, as to, what those motivations are, as I say, I didn't see the preview for next week, so I don't want to speculate too much. But I think we will have to get some explanation of how exactly Ryan Wilder broke so bad. So before we move on to the MVP section, was there anything else anyone wanted to mention? An Easter egg, a great moment, or a moment of cringe?
That wig was atrocious. I know Ritter mentioned it, but, I feel like it needed to be said again.
Okay, it's time for the MVP section. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character's been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. I don't remember who I chose first last time, so I'm just going to go with Jeff. Jeff, state which character impressed you throughout the episode and why.
Yay. A Goldface. Fantastic. From beginning to end. Incredibly entertaining, charming as always, just spectacular. And once again, I noticed his height in this episode. It was just really blatantly obvious that he's ridiculously tall. But yeah, he was just fantastic from beginning to end. Just incredibly enjoyable. A rogue that I do not mind seeing again and again because he's always just so much fun. So yes, for me, 100% Goldface. Although a little sad about the breakup and that he turned on the wonderful metahuman trafficker, Amunet Black. But yes, he was a joy.
Fingers crossed that we'll get that long-awaited Goldface Cecile Horton team up. Although
Yes.
thing in a very wide shot in order to get them both in frame. Dimitri, who is your MVP and why?
I hated the meet cute, but Jacko was weirdly entertaining this whole episode. There was something endearing about like, all right, well, I'm not like, a saint, but also I have a kid here, so, I'll help you out. And, I do need to pay for his tuition though, so can you pay me? So I just found him so relatable. I found him such an empathetic character. Even though I hate the name The Hotness.
I was about to say you like the hotness.
I hate the name, but I just found him probably the most relatable character throughout this whole the journey that was this episode.
Well,
But
I'm going
similar
to
setup.
the theme of A, choosing a rogue, and B, choosing the character I'm most related to. I'm going to choose Hartley because he was such a dick in the episode. Just playing it was justified. I mean, that was his character, and he played it like that all the way through. I thought he was great. I loved his ASL scene. It was great to find out he knew that. I just thought his character was so consistent. At no point did you get the sense that the actor playing Hartley was like, I don't want to make him seem too much of a jerk. I want to file the edges off. He was just playing him straight out. Hey, I'm a dick, but I'm a brilliant dick, and you're all going to have to deal with that. And I think my co-host on this episode will realize where I'm coming from on that. So now let's move on to rating the episode. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 lightning bolts? The point system is allowed. If you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may archive the episode in the Flash Museum. Unusually, and channeling my inner Hartley, I'm going to be a dick and go first. I love this episode. I really, really loved this episode. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I just enjoyed this episode like I haven't enjoyed an episode of The Flash in a very long time. I loved the rogues, despite all the stuff we talked about that we didn't quite like. I love the West Allen stuff. The wig did not bother me as much as it bothered you guys. I think this was a very rewatchable episode. I would watch this episode again, just for the interplay between them, and also because curious to see what happens when we get the reveals about what Mark was up to. Why Red Death broke bad. I think that this will be an episode that stands up to multiple rewatching. So I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. Not quite archive worthy, but still damned enjoyable. And before Dimitri can shit all over that, Jeff, how would you rate this episode?
I had a feeling the truth was going to come out. We wouldn't get a final plot twist and that you would be pro-wig.
It wasn't quite that far, but I would like to point out that, and this is, a deep cut reference, but, when they did break the creme brulee, they used a spoon, not a fork, because you use a spoon on creme brulee like you use a fork on pie.
Yes, yeah. That is a deep cut from a different podcast, but deep cut. Okay, the conversation actually talked me up just a hair because I did find myself enjoying the conversation about this episode. I was going to come in at around 7.5, but I'm going to give it a solid 8. Because yes, I do have nitpicks about this entire episode. There were a couple moments that bugged me, the Chester and Allegra thing, which fortunately we just glossed over. We didn't even talk about poor Keown realizing that Allegra was smitten with Chester. Maybe we don't have to. But so we looked over that, and I still do have an issue as to, like, you don't trust us, but, like, you were saying untrustworthy stuff, so clearly he's not going to trust you. But that was a setup for him to reveal himself, and we did have a nice reveal with Jocko figuring out. I get it. But overall, it was still an enjoyable episode. So because of the enjoyment and the West Allen goodness, and even though the wig was atrocious, no matter what the hell the professor was just saying about trying to justify it, the wig was bad. Like as bad as like those like I Am Oliver Queen in a flashback type of wigs. Like it was just it's bad. Bad. And that one wig that Alex wore on Supergirl, just bad. But Javicia Leslie was actually really good. Like she brought villainy to the forefront, and I'm so used to her being a hero that it is going to be interesting seeing her play a villain. I just need a good backstory about it because I still don't understand how our Ryan became her. But yeah, I will give it an 8. It isn't a horrible episode, and there are elements of it that are good. And our conversation, weirdly, even though we did bitch about it a bit, it talked me up at least half a point. So you're welcome, Professor.
Well, remember, my headcanon is that, Ryan Wilder is from a dark dystopian future where presumed hair care isn't as important as it is in contemporary. So
maybe where
my hair looks that way.
Maybe where the Queen kids are from.
Hey, could be.
Yeah.
Dimitri, how would you rate the episode?
I'm in shock. I cannot believe somebody rated this a 10.
Right. And wait, can you...
I chuckled. I went back. I rewatched certain scenes. I really enjoyed this episode.
No, but can you believe that he slightly defended the wig? He's trying to pretend like he did it, but...
The wig. I'm not defending the wig. I'm justifying the hair choice. And by the way, if I've learned anything in life, it is not to question a black woman's hair.
That is true. That is true. Although I don't feel like it's her hair because she didn't buy it. Like they put that thing on her, right, Dimitri?
I don't know that. Javicia may have, dyed a skunk stripe in her hair. She could be going mad on this.
No,
I don't think she did.
We will not besmirch Javicia Leslie's real hair.
I would be very sad if it turned out that was I would question everything I know about physics. But also, yeah, I don't think that was her real hair. But I also can't believe you love this episode. I'm going to give this a 7. There were moments that were chuckle-worthy. There were moments that subverted my expectations. But the overall plot is still very, wooden. The interplay between so many characters feels really forced. Even the meet cute scene, it felt like, this is us writers trying to be funny and clever, and it really isn't coming across as funny or as clever. It just even the conversation between Barry and Iris didn't really make sense to me. Barry is the Flash. How is she worried about not having enough time to do things when her husband has super speed? The whole thing this still lacked anything that got me deeply invested until Javicia showed up. So for that reason, I'm giving it a 7.
Did you enjoy Keown in this episode, Dimitri?
Oddly enough, Keown was a contender for MVP.
Oh, what? And both of you laughed at me last week.
Hated Frost. But oddly, Keown, I guess maybe because she's supposed to be basically a Martian, she's never lived, she knows nothing, so, she doesn't have to be a believable character. But, a lot of Keown's dialogue and stuff, sold me. It was giving me, kind of Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy vibes.
Yes.
I was like, okay, it's better than Frost, for sure. Frost was not believable as a 50s black and white movie era gangster, but Keown is believable as E.T.
E.T. Yes.
So yeah, I found her oddly like inoffensive this
Nice.
episode.
Both of you have tickets to the Keon train now.
Yeah,
Choo-choo.
yeah.
Not for as much. There's
But
Oh. Sorry.
While we're giving hair feedback, there's no reason for the random blue yarn in her hair. Like, put it down.
It's supposed to be a callback to like Frost, I think. 'Cause-
Frost did a lot of knitting.
Yes.
Join us next time for a brand new installment of The Central City Citizen. And don't forget to check out our new spin-off podcast, Wigging Out, our weekly in-depth look at the hairdressers of the Arrowverse. In the meantime, here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Poppy Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Poppy Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychuloradio.com. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@poppychuloradio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chulo Radio programs by visiting poppychuloradio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for The Central City Citizen and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-host, please wish the listeners good night, starting with Dimitri
Good night, Central City.
and Jeff.
Good night, Central City, Gotham City, and I guess the Gotham City of the future.
Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to The Central City Citizen by Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. New episodes released every Friday. You can also download the entire series by visiting poppychuloradio.com/archives. Good night. In the meantime, here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us. Thanks, announcer.
Professor, can I tell you when your pooch, you said, here's our announcer, and then your pooch goes, "Roo, roo," and then you said, thanks, announcer.
The timing of it was inauspicious.
It was magical.
That was more perfect comedic timing than has been displayed in the last 5 seasons of The Flash.
I wasn't sure whether it would be picked up because the dog is upstairs and I'm downstairs, but apparently